Repeated actions can create an identity without us realizing it, because repeated actions then instill in people's minds what you stand for. And while, yes, you'll have statements and brand statements in the website people can go to, but by doing something repeatedly or sharing information in the same way or the same type of information, people automatically will start to think, oh, they understand hair. They understand, I'm giving an example from my brand Glaze, from one of the brands in our portfolio, Glaze. They understand glossing. They're teaching me the nuances between the different shades. They're a funny brand. They do great collaborations, whatever it is, but it has to really be consistent.
Welcome back to Med Creator 101. I'm Mimi Banks, the founder and CEO of MB Social, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, board-certified dermatologist and dermfluencer, Dr. Dustin Portela. Today, we're thrilled to welcome a very special guest, Said Dabbagh, president of Waldencast Brands, where he leads the Ventures brands, Glaze, Coats, and Wind. Said is also the co-founder of science-backed skincare brand, Dr. Idriss. With over 18 years of experience in consumer and luxury brand building across both global and local markets, Said is a seasoned marketing leader. Prior to joining Waldencast, he built Dr. Idriss, where he led the brand's strategic vision, go-to-market execution, and business growth, driving significant industry recognition and commercial success. Previously, he held the position of CMO for Fakai Brands, where he collaborated with the founder to revitalize the brand's identity. Said played a pivotal role in expanding the brand's footprint and product pipeline while spearheading high-impact consumer marketing initiatives. Before that, he held a key role as a marketing executive at L'Oréal USA, where we met, where he drove brand and marketing strategies for iconic brands like L'Oréal Paris, Maybelline, and Garnier. At his core, Said is a brand-building expert and a true guru when it comes to crafting a dynamic, powerful social media presence. Welcome, Said.
Hi, Mimi. Hi, Dr. Portela. How are you?
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Before we get too far into the podcast, we have a little tradition on the Med Creator podcast to get to know you a little bit more as a person. So if you're open to it, I'd like to hit you with a few questions. You can answer them rapid fire. You can expand if you'd like. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. First off, talking or texting?
Do voice notes count?
Voice notes. That's a whole new category, but yes, they count.
Oh, you're one of those.
I'm kidding. I mean, I'm actually a big texter. If I had to choose, I would say more texting over talking.
All right. Favorite day of the week?
Thursday. You still have some time to get shit done, but you know the weekend's right around the corner.
Yeah. Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in?
I think I'd have to say Miami. The beach, the vibe, the Latino influence. And actually, I was recently there, and I think it's one of the last cities in the U.S. where women and men still get really dressed up to go out to dinner and for a night out. So every time I'm there, I'm like, wow.
Nice.
They definitely do not do that in California.
No, and in New York, very rarely.
A nickname that your parents used to call you?
It's not really, it's just my name with an O, so it's Saido.
Oh, I love that.
Do they still call you that today?
Sometimes, yeah.
Favorite holiday?
I think one of the most special holidays I've ever taken was when I visited Bhutan. It's a country that very few people know about, very magical. The people, the place, the culture, the scenery. It was about 10 days. I will never forget that trip.
Amazing. Well, Mimi, I'll now that we've answered those, I'll let you dive into the good stuff.
I know we all want to call him Saido. I think for a lot of different reasons, as we were talking about, I want to spend some time learning more about Dr. Idriss and the role you played, because I think it's super relevant for this audience. I think it's really interesting to know about how she built her brand, how you built it together, what the backstory was.
I have actually known Dr. Idriss since we were children. Our parents, our family friends, we both originally are from Lebanon. We both grew up in Washington, D.C. We both went to GW, although she's a few years younger. And so our lives have kind of been intertwined, and we hung out often in New York. And when I was still at L'Oréal and she was still working at Union Square Dermatology, she had started to amass followers, and she was like, you should quit your job and we should build a brand together. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to give up a career for followers. Like, I'm not sure about this. And then I leave L'Oréal in 2019 to join Fakai, and COVID hits in 2020. And here we are cooped up. I'm visiting her in Connecticut, spending weekends together. And she's bouncing all these things with me. And she had since 2017 already started her presence and established herself on social media. And slowly but surely that started to grow. And so when we're sitting there in 2020 and she's bouncing ideas off of me and asking for my advice, it just naturally happened. and I was giving her, honest feedback, or I was getting involved because of just the natural connection we had. And one day we sat down and said, should we do this? Should we go down this path? And then we spent about, I don't know, half a year spending weekends working on this. And then when I left Fakai in 2021, I was like, I can either go look for a new job as a CMO, or I could, since I was comfortable now in the startup world, in the gray area that, I love to call it, or I can dedicate the time and we can bring this to life soon. What do you want? And she goes, no, let's do this.
And was she still working full time as a dermatologist?
She was, but she was slowly working on building her own practice. Obviously, it took time. She did a whole build out of the practice. It took a good year or some, but it was still COVID as well. It wasn't full time, or it was reduced hours, and there was a little bit of flexibility, and we had more time to spend on this together. And what happened when I joined, she had already had somebody, helping her a little bit on social, and she was just starting to work with somebody in terms of formulation of the products. But that was it. There was the social following. There was an idea of what the brand should or could look like, but there wasn't something really tangible yet.
And then how many followers did she have then?
I think close to 300 or 400,000.
Was it just kind of like a random idea, like that she'd always wanted to start a product line? Or is it just kind of like looking at you were this guy that worked at L'Oreal, that products, and what do you think I should do, kind of?
She never went into it wanting to create a brand. She went into it just being herself. She looked at me to say, like, based on your expertise and your knowledge, like, how can you guide this ship? Where should we focus, and what are the steps that are needed? And I mean, a brand is so much more than just a physical product. Actually, I think a product at the end of the day is not even the brand. It's synthesized in the product and obviously has to deliver, but everything else really matters a lot before you even get to the product. At some point, she was like, I feel like based on the inputs she was getting from her community, the comments, the engagement, the enthusiasm, there was definitely an indication that people were hungry for her to give more. It was kind of the reverse where, okay, it's really being asked of me, but what is it that I can give them? And how can I give them? That's where it became more of like, okay, if it's a product line also, what is it going to look like and how will it be? Because I believe nobody needs more products. There are a lot of products out there, but the reality is, are they serving the needs of consumers? What's missing? And a lot of it has come down to even the way that you connect and you educate. You might have a good formula, but if you don't know how to market it or you don't know how to put it into the hands of the right people, it really not barely existent in that case.
One of the things that I've always noticed with Dr. Idriss's content is she has a very engaged audience. For somebody to get that many followers, not all audiences are equal. People can have a lot of followers, but not have an engaged audience. What was it about her followers that made her confident that bringing forward physical products and putting them in their hands, that it would be successful as it has been? What kind of signals were you noticing behind the scenes with the audience that gave her the confidence to move forward with this idea?
So it was double-ended, I would say. One is the audience following her and her journey and her story, and her being her authentic self. And then she thinking, or us sitting together and asking her, what do you stand for? What is your personal brand? And then obviously, what would the product brand be? And then marrying the two, because her philosophies are what people inherently connect a lot with. And when we came out with the first 3 products, they represented exactly what she believed in. They delivered against the belief and the promise. And people who needed that solution are the ones that gravitated first to the products. Of course, a lot of people bought in at first because they loved her and they wanted to try it. But the ones that needed the hyperpigmentation correction and had discoloration are the ones who obviously this product line resonated a lot with them. But so I would say the first thing was sitting down and saying, you've said a lot since 2017 to 2020. Now is the moment to define what your unique positioning is and what do you really stand for, and make sure it's ownable, it's credible. And one way to do that, which we did, was to go over things that she had said in the past and things that she had shared and look for a common thread or look for overlaps or look for consistency. And I would say that that is what healthcare professionals or people interested going into the beauty space and wanting to build a brand where they should start. Because without you realizing, that is where your credibility lies. And that's where you can rest your brand on versus trying to do it the other way where people are like, oh, I have a product idea. And then thinking, how can I make myself stand for that? That for me is a no-go.
And it seems so obvious. Like that seems so straightforward to say, okay, what do you stand for? And then how we bring that to life. But it's very true that a lot of people do come up to say there's this, they believe there's a white space or they want, and then they retrofit it to craft a story around that product.
I'll give you an anecdote. I was consulting for an internist not too long ago who was like, I've been working on creating this formula and I want to launch this product. And I'm like, great, what is it about? And she's like, it's for skin discoloration. And so I sat her down. I was like, okay, we'll work together. And just a week into it, I'm like, have you ever talked about discoloration? Do you usually treat discoloration? Do your patients primarily come to you for that? And we couldn't check any of the boxes. And I said, okay, let's hold on. I want you to succeed, but I don't think you will succeed by doing it this way. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really hone in on what your philosophy is, where your passion lies, where your credibility is at, and what are you trying to bring and what are you trying to deliver and what kind of product and result do you want to put out there? And let's find the right products and develop them based on that. And she was all into it. But in that case, it took us over a year to define what she stood for because she wasn't a Shireen. It was a totally different scenario. But I will say that time was critical. And when that moment clicked, it was like, now I get it.
Mm-hmm. And now I would say even with the brands that you're working on, so now you turn yourself to a whole new set of brands. So you're working with brands and doing more traditional brand building, but with brands that you have to develop a name. It's not a Maybelline, it's not a Garnier, that you have to probably work like 10 times harder, which anyone does when you're building a brand. What strategies are you using to grow these brands? Is it key learnings that you used from Fakai or just even from what you saw in the medical space?
So it's a little bit different than you're right. We don't have a founder, so we can't rest on that. We are a traditional brand, typical brand where you created a product, you have a great brand name, you have a great formula. So obviously we leverage a lot more of the traditional tactics. But one of the biggest learnings for me working with Dr. Idriss was community building. And in order to authentically community build, it means high touch point. It means frequent touch point or being consistent in your touch points. And those are some of the things that I've been trying to instill in the team when I came over to Waldencast. While yes, if I go back to Dr. Idriss, we launched the product line September, October 2022. The brand building part had happened for 5 years prior, and with her and I working together for 2 years prior. So one of the big learnings there that I instill in my team day to day is we don't start the day it goes out to the world. It starts the day that it comes into our mind and we sit around the table. And so we start ideating because if we go to the number one medium today in marketing is really social media, right? And social media is like a 24/7 network for your brand. I mean, each Instagram handle today for a brand needs to run a little bit like a network where you're feeding it content over and over. And it's not just content that's really curated. It's, oh, we're coming up with this idea. Oh, we're reaching out to our community. We want you to test the product. Oh, we received negative feedback on a shade. We put that all out there because it's all feeding people with information. It's education. It's showcasing that this brand cares and that we're connecting.
And ultimately, those are kind of the principles like Dr. Idriss had developed her core identity. You're instilling that in the team that this is our identity. These are the things we will do consistently. And that kind of is what the brand will be known for, so that when you release a product, people understand how it will be supported, all of those different things. So even though you don't have a specific personality it's built around, you've kind of created an identity for the brand.
Repeated actions can create an identity without us realizing it, because the repeated actions then instill in people's minds what you stand for. And while, yes, you'll have statements and brand statements in the website people can go to, but by doing something repeatedly or sharing information in the same way or the same type of information, people automatically will start to think, oh, they understand hair. They understand, I'm giving an example from my brand Glaze, from one of the brands in our portfolio Glaze. They understand glossing. They're teaching me the nuances between the different shades. They're a funny brand. They do great collaborations, whatever it is, but it has to really be consistent.
And what I think is interesting here is that with Dr. Idriss, it started off with a community. And then brands aspire to build community. If you're thinking about these tactics, maybe that you learned from Dr. Idriss, I'm sure that there are people listening that want to build a community. They want to be like Dr. Idriss. They want to be like Dr. Portela. But even the brands, they have a pretty significant community that you can tell that you've done a great job taking those learnings and really being social first. What are, I guess, advice or tools that you use or strategies to grow that community?
The reality is that whether you're a person or whether you're a product, some of the principles remain the same. Branding is definitely more than just a logo. It's really like the promise. So making sure that your brand is really rooted in a clear and compelling mission, that you're addressing a real need. We talked a little bit of this retrofitting. I think those days are over. Unless you have a lot of money. At L'Oreal, that was one of the things that we did really well, which was we were super strong and big on innovation and technology. And then you start thinking, okay, how can I work that backward? And the way that we were also, some of the smaller brands were winning, where they were instead thinking, I'm hearing this consumer need, or I'm like seeing a need that's being unmet. Sometimes the need is from a product perspective. Sometimes it's from an education perspective. Sometimes it's I want a brand to personify me or understand me or connect with me on a human level. So really, you're rooting yourself in a clear and compelling mission that really addresses a real need in people's lives is a winner. I would say, especially for healthcare professionals, trust is really everything. And your brand should signal that credibility, the expertise, and the care that you bring from the start. The interesting thing is it's being translated from you as a human in face-to-face interactions to now as you, the founder of this product line or this brand that is interacting. So it's just nuances because the medium is changing, but the same expression needs to remain the same. I would say also this idea of being really authentic and personal, storytelling. I know you've heard this, but it really does drive connection. And no matter what the personal storytelling is, people don't just want to see the highs all the time. They don't want to just know the nice, pretty, shiny things that are happening. They want to know like the pain, and they want to know the hard, and they want to know what's not worked. Also, your points of views on things, because at the end of the day, as we said, that's all building a persona that they're connecting to. And it's just like brands today are kind of like physical, people. It's just a different way. And why do you care about this problem so much? And why should they care about it and trust you that you're going to give them the best? Another layer would be this idea of trust that's built on transparency. So being very open, no BS, no filters, not sounding like you're marketing to them, not sounding like if they're going to read it, they need to get it. So it needs to be really transparent, whether it's about the ingredients, whether it's about clinicals. If you do something, talk about it. You don't do something, you should also share, I couldn't do this for a certain reason, or I couldn't achieve this, or I'm working on achieving this. People are very interested in that. And the more transparent you can be, trust me, that's going to go a long way. And sometimes problems can actually be positive for you as well, because that's you just being human. This idea of community over customers is also another one that's important. Just like you, Dr. Portela, or like Dr. Idriss, you guys didn't start out by saying, oh, I want to like launch a brand, or I want to have a major following. You're like, I just want to talk, or I just want to share what's on my mind, or I don't know how to public speak, so I'm taking this as a challenge, like what Dr. Idriss shares. So when it comes to that, and even in the brands that I lead today, it's this idea that every touch point, if we take the care to build a community, that will translate into a customer. And you see it because very rarely do we as consumers buy products today that we care nothing about the brand, or that we could care less whether it performs or whatever it is. Because of the awareness and because of social media and the exposure, and because there's so many options out there, you're choosing where to spend your money, and you're choosing places that make you feel good, or you're choosing it in places where you feel that they're delivering against their promises, where you see the results. And so I think the most successful brands are not selling products or services. They're creating a community where people feel seen, supported, and ultimately, yes, the products are delivering against the promise, but there is true brand love that starts before they even try the product.
I feel seen. I feel we speak the same language. I feel so seen and heard. If everybody could think this way. I know that Dustin feels this way also.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That whole statement is really giving people something that they can identify with, that you care about them, whether you are just a healthcare provider talking on social media, or whether you're bringing a product to them that's going to serve a need. It's got to deliver, but they have to have that deeper connection because there is so much competition out there, whether other people to listen to or other products to try.
If you're starting new now, you're probably like, oh, how do I do it? Or like everything seems like a mountain. But every successful person started on a little molehill, or like for them, it was like baby steps. And that's the way you need to think about it. It's not about trying to do everything all at the same time or to replicate what others. The biggest mistake is somebody today looking at you, Dr. Portela, or looking at Dr. Idriss and being like, how do I get to them where they are today? What they should be doing is looking and saying, how can I be them 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? And what did they do back then? And then starting it that way, because there are no real shortcuts. And there could be slight fast tracks because I think social media has evolved. And in today's world, it just takes one hit, one influencer, big influencer to pick it up. One mention can really turn things around. Fine. They may not happen very often. It is possible, but there is no fast track. What you're really trying to do through all your efforts is create a snowball effect so that every fleck falling is adding and building. That's shaping this ball, because one day, hopefully in the near future, it's just going to roll itself and you just continue to fuel it.
Yeah, it's that overnight success story, 10 years in the making. You may get lucky and catch a break and get, mentioned by a huge influencer, but those are things that are out of your control. And we want to focus on what is in your control. And it's bringing that authenticity, that trust, that genuineness to your audience and speaking to them like a real person.
And speaking of that, let's talk about Coats. So Coats, derm-approved brand. So it's extra interesting to us because it has that medical arm. How do you work with dermatologists? Like, how do you leverage them in that community? And or what do you look for in partners when you're going to work with someone?
We do work with derms. We actually have someone that we work with consistently. Coats is a very small brand, and so we're very selective on what we do and how we do it. It is a skincare line that was developed and is geared towards younger skin. It's, everything you need, nothing that you don't. So the approach is working with a dermatologist to make sure the way that we're communicating is a hybrid between medical science, but like real life. And then also making sure that the systems that we develop work in tandem, the formulas all deliver against the results. And what we're looking for is someone who, specific on that brand, we're less interested in someone who has a big following or a big name, but it's more about the credibility and the consistency. Especially when you're a small brand, I'm more interested in someone who we can depend on, someone who we feel like is interested in our growth or our development as much as we are in theirs. And that's kind of how the best partnerships seem to work, or that I believe work the best, when there's synergies somewhere along the way in various factors, and there could be multiple factors for you to come together. And in that same way, Coats is also a brand where we've gone deeper into, for example, college students, working with colleges. We've involved dermatologists to connect them with students directly, so they have access to that, because it's a life moment as well for them. And having that access is important, and us being the link has really resonated well.
I think that that's really interesting insight, because you can partner with a brand as a creator at any step with your social presence, because when you're a medical professional, there are a lot of different ways that you can add value to a brand. From the formula side, from the result side, a lot of things that you don't necessarily see outwardly.
Yeah, no, of course. From the formula product development side, definitely. From the ingredient, side as well. From the benefit side as well. From the communication side. And that's also two-sided, because one is internal communication, meaning stuff that the brand is writing about and things like that they publish. But then there's also the external side, where you are a link with the brand externally facing, where you're talking to somebody about the brand. It's multifaceted. So depending on where you are or where your strength is or the size of followers, you have the opportunity to engage with brands. And just because you don't have followers or a large amount of following doesn't mean that you can't. I think it's more about demonstrating the expertise and where within the life cycle or within the product cycle can you fit. I would say skincare brands are open to derms reaching out to them. And it's less about like, hey, I want you to pay me money to do something. It's more about like, do we have synergies together? Do we believe in the same things? Are we communicating externally the same things? Is our approach similar? And then you say, hey, by the way, I've done like 6 episodes maybe, or I've talked in multiple articles about X, and you have also been pushing X. So like, I feel like this could be a natural synergy. Let's link up and have a chat and then see how that goes.
I think that's a great approach. When I first started on social media and started to get followers, which again was not the goal with my platforms, as I started to see that, hey, there could be the opportunity to work with brands. The first brand, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, that I reached out to was an outbound request to CeraVe. I've recommended them for years at that point in my clinic. And I felt like the objectives behind their products and the story that they told very much aligned with what I was doing. And so there was that natural synergy from the get-go. It wasn't just like, who can I target that might pay me money? It's like, this is exactly what I talk about. And we could form a partnership based on mutual values and alignment there.
And I would also say, don't be afraid to say no or to be very strict with who you want to work with. Like, your credibility is very valuable. And I'm not saying like you can't go and do a million partnerships, but at the end of the day, really think about what you want. Because if you ultimately want to create a brand for yourself or you want to launch a product line, people will look at the history and people look at what have you pushed and what have you promoted. If you promoted too much, then it makes it harder for you to stand on one pillar. And nobody's going to fault you for promoting too little, as long as you have a solid story of what you're putting out there. But I would say be selective and don't worry about turning things down. There's always going to be opportunities, as we just mentioned, depending on what it is that you really want.
Again, I couldn't agree with you more. These are things that we completely agree with. Sitting where you are now, it's very interesting because you're on the big brand side at L'Oreal. Then you move to founder brands, which is not always so easy because you're used to having the resources, you're used to having the systems and processes. Now you're growing the brands. I wanted to go back to where you are today now at Waldencast because it seems like a really natural progression of putting together the roles that you've had in your past. I'd like to know more about what your role is, of how you lead these brands, and specifically your focus now in terms of brand building, or how you put together your experiences from your previous career.
You're right in that I started in big brand. I then went to founder-led, and then founder-led, it was a reacquired brand with a very well-known founder. And then it was totally different direction with creating a brand from the ground up with someone who had built a following. And then now I'm more in the space of a brand that's been a couple of brands that have been out there for a few years that are, I would say they're more like toddler brands. They're not babies and they're not yet big kids. And so my responsibility is really driving the brand growth, overseeing the operational excellence, financial transformation, positioning these portfolios for really long-term success in the global market. Each brand is distinctive in what we do and also the challenges that we face. But the largest from them is really the Glaze brand, which is the hair gloss line, which launched in the UK and then a year later in the US and now is at Target. And we just launched in about 1,400 doors at CVS and at Meijer in the Midwest. So the real focus, I would say, across the board, though, is on gaining awareness. And one thing is gaining awareness through really out-of-the-box campaigns and education. So whether Glaze, which is a hair gloss line where hair color category is very technical and there's a professional aspect to it, even though we're making it fun and we're making it easy. One of the things when I joined, I was like, guys, I get that we say no mess, no stress, and that it's easy and they just put it on and wash it off. But the primary touch point with the brand requires thinking because you want people to make sure they choose the right shade that's right for them to get an amazing experience. Because if they don't, they've really veered off course and then we're down a different path. So there, you have a technical product that we're making fun. And then you have Coats, for example, which is a skincare brand that is more scientific, that also leverages medical and dermatologists. So that also requires education. And then, of course, Wind is the baby that we can have a lot more fun in because it's more experiential, it's more inspirational, it's fragrance, body, it's sensorial. But if I were to focus a little bit on the Glaze brand in this case, when you're a small brand, you need to find ways to make a lot of noise with very little. And that is one piece of advice that I've experienced, but I also would give to anybody starting out is it's also the life stage where you can take the most risks, where you can ask for forgiveness, where you can make the most mistakes and get away with it all. Then there's obviously a point where like that door closes. But until it does, the approach that I push a lot is let's think outside the box. Let's come up with campaigns that are going to stop people in their tracks and make them think. Even if they sound risque, the real thing that you're trying to achieve is you want a reaction. And you want a reaction. And the reaction doesn't need to be positive for everyone, because we're also not supposed to appeal to everyone, but you want them to have a reaction. And of course, as long as more people have positive than negative, you're succeeding, but it's going to be successful. But I would really say, when I sit down with a team, it's like everything that we're doing is the juice worth the squeeze. And then are we really making a difference? And are we going to stop people in their tracks? Are they going to notice us and engage with us? And then ultimately the results will purchase and grow the business, etc.
I mean, I think that that's incredible advice. I think that some key takeaways here of that it's the long game, that it's about community, that it's about being authentic, that it's about being scrappy, that it's about just trying, seeing what you can do. I think that brand building, it's a journey and it's an evolution.
Yes, for 100%. You need to be open to where the road takes you, but you need to be able to see the signs. You need to be able to plan ahead for anything that might happen. And it's all okay because it's all through the learning process. Those first few years when you're launching a brand or when you're just a small brand, and we talked about all the mistakes and the risks and all that, that's called the learning phase. And it's okay as long as you learn from the learning, and if it wasn't a positive learning, that it turns into one, or that you continue to hone and refine the things that are really working and fuel them. But I would say that is really the learning phase. And you would never know, because no two brands are the same. If it works for one person, it may not work for the other. And also, just copy pasting from what a playbook of another brand may not work for you either, because it may not be ownable to you if you haven't spent the time to think about it.
Very true, because even for Dustin's been through iterations of his logo. We've been through iterations of our logo at MB Social.
No, exactly. Even that. And don't be afraid to make those changes. What I will say is make them fast, meaning if you're feeling it, if you know it needs to get done, just do it, and do it sooner rather than later, because then you'll be playing catch up when it's harder.
We're talking about brands, but all of this is applicable to an individual creator, being able to make those adjustments. As a leader in Waldencast, you are the type of leader that allows the brand to take risks, obviously calculated risks, to try to make that noise. And those are things that creators can do as well. We're not saying to go out and be inflammatory or anything like that, but being willing to try things, move quickly. Sometimes you have to break things as you do that. So I think that that's really, really an inspiring story.
I mean, I can give you guys a very tangible example. When I joined Waldencast and we were sitting down with the Glaze team and we were looking at our strengths and weaknesses, doing complete analysis and who this product works best with, we really honed in on the fact that girls that don't color their hair have the best results by using our product, because it was initially developed for quote unquote virgin hair, as we call them. And it's non-damaging, it's semi-permanent. So many things that check the box, where at the end of the day, especially young girls today, are really happy and proud about their natural self. But who doesn't want a little bit of a boost? I mean, who doesn't want a little bit of a glow up? So in this case, we have been working for the past few months on a very risque / cheeky campaign that is headline calling all virgins. And that's hair color virgins, of course. And we've actually worked with a creative that is leveraging AI to show you that the shine is great and that you can't tell whether it's artificial or real, but it's really real. So we've created imagery and creative that has this lineup of girls that are all AI created, but then those girls are based off real life girls that we've actually shot after and used the product on unretouched. And the shine and the color is identical. And then it goes into, a lot more of this storytelling where we talk about the holy grail of divine shine. We talk about the fact that the products are like just a quickie because they take 10 minutes. We talk about the fact that they're always gentle because there's no ammonia and there's no, there's no peroxide and there's no parabens in them. And then we talk about that it's no commitment issues because they are semi-permanent. So it's being cheeky and fun, and the visual territory is very beautiful while being very fresh. And there were people who were like, oh my God, I don't know. And there were people on, who we showed this to, who were like, oh, but everyone always had this little cheeky, like a smile or like a twinkle, where I'm like, we're onto something. I'm hoping that this will take us to greater heights. But that's the kind of expression that you need or that you need to be thinking of, I believe, in today's world, because we don't have the budgets of the big brands.
It's storytelling. It's the hook. What is the hook? And that's something I think Dustin does incredibly well. Even Dr. Idriss, like when you're creating content or when you're engaging with your audience, how do you storytell in a way that is compelling? And this is an incredible example of that.
Now, Said, before we wrap up, I do want to get kind of taking this and distilling it down to our audience of healthcare professionals. And what are some, key tips or tricks or ideas that they can use as they look to build their own branding when they're just getting started on social media?
I don't know if I can say one thing, but I have a few things. First of all, I would say make sure you know what you stand for and what it is that you really want. Because wanting and really wanting are two distinct factors. And really wanting requires fire, okay? You need that fire to get you to where you want to go. I would say also get ready to invest a lot of time and then eventually money. But the first thing is definitely time. We didn't talk about this, but earlier when this whole setting your brand up and the education and the building of the community, that's free time. Like you're giving this to people because the return is going to be greater later on, but you got to be ready to invest a lot of the time. And then a couple of qualities like be yourself. Do not copy paste or think that you need to do it because somebody else is doing it. I think that's the biggest mistake in some brands that come out there. Be consistent. So this is key to really building credibility. It's all about the pattern. So after a while, you'll look back and be like, oh yeah, I have been talking about this in different ways because as we just said, reskinning something over and over and finding different hooks to say the same thing are critical, but be consistent. And then honestly, don't give up. It's only going to get harder, but then the harder it gets, the sweeter the reward is, at the end of the day. That doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you sold the brand or the brand's bringing in billions, but like you're actually making a difference and you're in somebody's life, or you've captured an audience that wasn't represented or wasn't served before. So it can come, the reward comes in various ways. Definitely don't give up because it will get hard, but it does feel better.
Yeah, excellent advice. And kind of as a follow-up, I want to imagine a scenario where somebody has been on social media for a while. They've got somewhat of a brand, but maybe they early on did not establish their values or their core identity. And they're now struggling to grow. Maybe they're not getting what they want out of social media. And so they're in this place where maybe they do need to rebrand. They need to pivot. They need to change. What kind of advice would you have on saying like, all right, maybe I did too many brand partnerships, or I was just copying what everybody else did and it worked for a while. How can an individual rebrand when it comes to social media?
You can always rebrand. The thing that you need is time. You can't shortcut time, but time allows you space to disconnect and reconnect. And so if you've done too many brand partnerships or you succeeded through a one-hit wonder, but now you're not sure what you stand for, people aren't sure, sit down, take the time to retrench, take the time to suss out everything that we talked about and build that. Time doesn't mean months. You can do that. Actually, that's where you can fast track as long as you commit to it. And then start building that. You might already have a following, but start putting that out there consistently. And then you'll notice that within a short period of time, people will start identifying what you're trying to achieve, or you'll be able to feel better about the messaging you've been putting out, or that you want to stand for something and you hadn't before, but this is your opportunity. So you have the platform. Now you just need to hold on to the mic and keep talking. But I would say just don't wait. It goes back to this fire flame. It talks, this idea of like, don't give up, but do it now, do it fast. And even Dr. Idriss had to rebrand from Pelotoc Derm to Dr. Idriss. But I mean, that's a tangible rebranding. The persona didn't really change, but the product brand did. But then again, don't be shy about it. I mean, she wasn't shy about it. She was like, this is what I faced. This is why I had to do it. And you always have to believe that there was a reason behind that too, that's greater, that you will one day realize as well. It's just a redirection on, a different path that is meant to lead you to success.
Very solid advice. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Said, for joining us today and sharing some really incredible and valuable insights and information across your vast experience. I think that a lot of HCPs can take tremendous value from what you shared and how they can make an impact on social media. And we really hope today's conversation gave you, the listeners, some fresh ideas to take your personal brand to the next level. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with your peers, and connect with us on Med Creator 101. And follow Glazed, Wind, and Coats on Instagram.
And we'll have those links down in the podcast show notes, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.